Poor mother goes to a job interview with twins in her arms. But when the billionaire sees her, he does something unbelievable. Jenna stood before the iron gate and adjusted Claire on her left hip. The girl was heavy, 15 months old, and she already felt like double that. Elise whimpered in her other arm. Her soft cries echoed in the street silence. "It's okay, sweetie." Just a little longer. The walk had been long. Almost 2 hours from the bus stop. Her legs ached, her arms burned, but she had made it. The mansion rose before her like something out of a dream. White walls, enormous windows, a garden that seemed to have no end. It was the kind of place she only saw in magazines. Jenna looked down. Her old sneakers were covered in dust. Her jeans had a patch on the knee. Her shirt was wrinkled and stained with milk. She didn't belong here. But she needed to be here. She took a deep breath and pressed the intercom button. Nothing. She pressed it again. An irritated voice came through the speaker. "Yes, I'm here about the cleaning position. Mrs. Hart said I could come today." Silence. Then a click. The gate opened slowly. Jenna walked in, feeling the weight of the bag on her shoulder. Inside were 3 empty baby bottles, 4 diapers, and a change of clothes for each girl. It was all she could bring. The path to the main door seemed endless. The gravel crunched under her feet. Claire drooled on her shoulder. Elise pulled her hair hard. When she reached the door, a woman in a grey uniform was already waiting. She was about 50, with her hair in a tight bun and an expression that said it all: total disapproval. "Are you the new cleaner?" "Yes, ma'am. My name is Jenna." The woman looked at the twins. She frowned. "And these children?" Jenna felt her heart race. "They're my daughters. Elise and Claire. They'll be quiet, I promise. They won't be any trouble." "Trouble?" The woman crossed her arms. "Miss, this isn't a daycare. Mr. Ashford doesn't allow—" "Please." Jenna's voice came out firmer than she expected. "Please, just let me talk to him, just for a minute. He's busy. I'll wait." The woman was about to say no. Jenna saw it in her eyes, but before she could, a deep voice cut through the air. "Let her speak." Jenna looked up. At the top of the marble staircase, a man was descending slowly. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up and dark dress pants. He was about 35, with short brown hair and a strong jawline, but it was his gaze that caught her attention. Blue-grey eyes cold as ice. Nolan Ashford. She had heard of him. Everyone in the city knew the name. A businessman, owner of half the commercial buildings in the area, rich, powerful, and distant. He stopped 10 feet away from her. He said nothing, just watched. Jenna held her daughters tighter. Claire shifted, uncomfortable. Elise let out a small sob. "Mr. Ashford," Jenna began, trying to keep her voice steady. "I know this isn't ideal. I know Mrs. Hart didn't mention the girls when she recommended me, but I need this job." He remained silent. Those cold eyes didn't blink. "I don't have anyone to leave them with," Jenna continued, the words tumbling out now, almost tripping over each other. "I have no family. No money for daycare, but they're well behaved. They'll stay in a corner. I promise they won't be any trouble." Nolan tilted his head slightly. He seemed to be analyzing every word, every gesture. "Do you have cleaning experience?" The question caught Jenna by surprise. "Yes, sir. I worked at a hotel for 2 years. And before that, in a private home." "Why did you leave?" She swallowed hard. "The hotel closed down. The family moved abroad." He nodded slowly. Then he looked at the girls. Claire stopped whimpering and looked back at him. Elise did the same. They both had light, almost golden, blonde hair and eyes as blue as the sky. "How many months old are they?" 15 months. "Twins?" "Yes, sir." The woman in the grey uniform cleared her throat. "Mr. Ashford, if I may, this is highly irregular. Children on the property during work hours." "I'm aware, Martha." His voice was low but carried authority. "Thank you." Martha closed her mouth. She looked like she wanted to argue but didn't dare. Nolan turned his gaze back to Jenna. The seconds dragged on. Claire started to fuss again. Jenna rocked her gently, but she could feel her own body trembling. She needed this job. She had to have it. The landlord had given her until the end of the week. She was 3 months behind on rent. She had $12 in her wallet and no other prospects beyond this door. "Please," she whispered, and she hated the desperation in her own voice. But it was the truth. She was desperate. Nolan took a step forward, then another. He stopped right in front of her, so close that Jenna could smell the expensive cologne he wore. He looked at Claire, then at Elise. The girls fell silent, just watching him. For a moment, something in his eyes shifted, something too quick for Jenna to identify, but it was there. "You'll work 6 days a week, Saturday and Sunday off. You start at 7 in the morning and finish at 5 in the afternoon. The children stay with you at all times. I don't want to see them running through the house, breaking things or screaming." Jenna's heart hammered in her chest. Was he saying yes? Was he really? "I'll take care of them, sir. I promise I'll—" "The salary is $800 a week." She blinked. 800, that was more than she made at the hotel, much more. "Sir, you're hired?" The words hit her like a bombshell. Jenna was speechless for a second. Then she felt her eyes sting. She couldn't cry, not now. "Thank you," she said, her voice cracking. "Thank you, Mr. Ashford. I won't let you down." He didn't reply, just nodded and turned his back. "Martha, show her where the laundry room is." "She starts now." And then he walked back up the stairs without a second glance. Martha stood frozen, clearly stunned, but she wasn't going to question her boss. "Come on," she said curtly. "I'll show you where everything is." Jenna followed, still trying to process what had just happened. Her legs felt weak. The relief was so overwhelming she could barely breathe. But she couldn't stop now. She had work to do. As she walked through the mansion's corridors, with her daughters in her arms and the heavy bag on her shoulder, Jenna glanced back one last time. Nolan Ashford was standing at the top of the stairs, watching. His eyes met hers for an instant, then he looked away and disappeared through a door. Jenna took a deep breath and kept walking. She had done it. Against all odds, she had done it. Now she just had to not mess it up. The laundry room was bigger than Jenna's entire apartment. She looked around, trying to take in the size of the place. Huge washing machines, shelves stacked with cleaning supplies, a large metal sink. Everything was clean. Everything was organized. Martha pointed to a corner near the window. "You can leave the children there. There's an outlet if you need to warm up a bottle." Jenna nodded and walked to the corner. She put her bag on the floor and made a small space with some clean rags. She laid Elise and Claire down there side by side. "You two be good here, okay?" "Mommy's going to be working right nearby," Claire yawned. Elise grabbed onto her shirt, not wanting to let go. "I know, sweetie, I know." Jenna kissed both their foreheads. "But we need this?" Martha was already at the door, impatient. "I'll show you the rest of the house. Pay attention because I'm not going to repeat myself." The next 2 hours were a blur of information. Martha showed her every room, every closet, every bathroom. She explained how Mr. Ashford liked things, always in their place, always immaculate. "He doesn't tolerate carelessness," Martha said, looking Jenna up and down. "And he doesn't tolerate noise." Jenna swallowed hard and nodded. When they returned to the laundry room, the girls were asleep. Jenna felt an immense sense of relief. "You'll start with the living room," Martha said. "Vacuum, dust, arrange the cushions, then the downstairs bathrooms." And then she left, leaving Jenna alone. Jenna took a deep breath. She gathered the cleaning supplies and got to work. The hours flew by. She cleaned, scrubbed, and polished. Every time she heard a whimper from the laundry room, she rushed over, she'd nurse them, change a diaper, soothe them, then she'd go back to work. By 3 in the afternoon, her back ached. Her knees were bruised from kneeling so much, but the house sparkled. Martha appeared to inspect her work. She walked through the rooms in silence, running a finger over surfaces, looking for flaws. She didn't find any. "You can leave at 5, she said, without looking at Jenna. "Tomorrow, same time." Jenna nodded. She went back to the laundry room and picked up the girls. They were awake now, restless. Claire was whimpering. Elise had a dirty diaper. Jenna changed them both quickly, grabbed her bag and left. The walk back was worse than the walk there. The girls were tired and cranky. So was Jenna. When she finally got to her apartment, it was almost 7 at night. The building was falling apart. Peeling wallpaper, a smell of mold creaking stairs. The apartment was on the 3rd floor. Just one room. Bed, stove, sink. A shared bathroom down the hall. Jenna went inside and locked the door. She put the girls on the bed and sat on the floor, exhausted. On the small table beside her, there was a pile of bills, and on top of them, an eviction notice. She had until Friday. 3 days. Jenna closed her eyes. She did the math in her head. With this week's salary, she could pay 2 months of back rent. 1 month would still be left. But maybe the landlord would accept installments. Maybe she had to, because Jenna had nowhere else to go. The next day, she woke up at 5 in the morning. She got the girls ready, grabbed the bag and left. She arrived at the mansion at 7 on the dot. Martha was already waiting, a to-do list in her hand. Today you'll do the 2nd floor bedrooms, then the kitchen. Jenna worked non-stop. The girls stayed in the laundry room again, playing with the clean rags Jenna had set out for them. At lunchtime, Martha brought a plate of food. "Leftovers from Mr. Ashford's lunch," she said, placing it on the laundry room table. "For you can eat it." Jenna looked at the plate. Rice and grilled chicken, vegetables, it looked like restaurant food. "Thank you." Martha left without another word. Jenna cut the chicken into tiny pieces and gave them to the girls. They ate with gusto. She ate the rest, slowly, savoring every bite. It had been 2 days since she had eaten a proper meal. On the 3rd day, everything changed. Jenna was cleaning the library when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around and came face to face with Nolan Ashford. He was wearing a dark suit today, a blue tie. He looked even more imposing than on the first day. "Mr. Ashford." Jenna straightened up quickly, dropping her cleaning cloth. "Sorry, I didn't know you were home." "I live here," he said, his tone dry. But there was no irritation in his voice, just a statement of fact. Jenna didn't know what to say. He walked to the window and looked outside. He was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, without looking at her. "How you leave every day at 5? "Yes, sir." "Where do you go?" The question caught Jenna off guard. To my home." "Where is it?" Jenna hesitated. "On the other side of town." He turned his head slightly. "You walk." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Nolan looked out the window again. "How long does it take?" 2 hours. "More or less. With the children?" "Yes." He didn't say anything for a long moment. Jenna stood there, unsure if she should continue working or wait. Then he spoke again, still with his back to her. "Where exactly are you living?" Jenna swallowed hard. "In an apartment. It's small, but how much do you pay for rent?" She blinked. "Sir, how much?" 400 a month." Nolan nodded slowly. "And are you current?" The silence that followed was answer enough. He finally turned to face her. His blue-grey eyes studied her face. Jenna wanted to look away, but she didn't. "How much do you owe?" 3 months, Jenna admitted quietly. "But the landlord said if I don't pay by Friday, she'll evict me." Nolan didn't seem surprised or shocked. He just nodded. "And how do you plan to pay?" "With this week's salary, I'll try to negotiate the rest." "And if she doesn't agree?" Jenna had no answer for that. Because she had no plan B, she had nothing. Nolan took a step forward, then another. He stopped near her, too near. "There's a room in the back of the house, next to the laundry room. It's small, but it has a bed, its own bathroom. No one uses it." Jenna frowned, confused. "You and the girls can stay there." The words took a second to register. When they did, Jenna's heart started to pound. "Sir, I can't." "You spend 4 hours a day commuting. 4 hours you could be resting, or taking care of the children." He crossed his arms. It doesn't make sense. "But I can't afford to pay for it." "I'm not charging you." Jenna blinked. "What?" "The room is empty. You need a place. The girls need to be safe." He said it as if it were the most logical thing in the world. "Use the room." "Mr. Ashford, it's practical." He cut her off. You get here earlier, leave later if you need to. The children are in a safe place. I have a rested and focused employee. Everyone wins. Jenna didn't know what to say. The offer was too generous. No one did this. No one offered free housing to a complete stranger. Sayas, why are you doing this? Nolan didn't answer right away. He looked out the window again. When he spoke, his voice was lower. Because it makes sense. It wasn't the whole answer. Jenna knew that, but it was the answer he was willing to give. I don't know what to say. Say yes or no. Jenna thought of the girls. She thought of the crumbling apartment. She thought of the 2-hour walk in the sun or rain. She thought of the eviction notice on her table. Yes, she said quietly. Yes, sir. Thank you. Nolan nodded. Martha will show you the room. You can bring your things tomorrow. He was about to leave, but Jenna called out to him. Mr. Ashford? He stopped and looked back. Thank you, Jenna repeated. This time, with more conviction. Really? He didn't smile. He didn't say, you're welcome. He just nodded and left. Jenna stood in the library, still holding the cleaning cloth, trying to process what had just happened. She had a place to stay, a safe place, for her and for the girls. For the first time in months, she felt something like hope. The move was quick. Jenna didn't have much to bring. An old suitcase with clothes, the baby bottles, some diapers, a thin blanket. Everything fit in 2 trips. The room in the back was simple. A single bed, a small wardrobe, a window that looked out onto the garden. The bathroom was tiny, but it was hers, all hers. When she closed the door on the first night, Jenna sat on the bed with the girls and let the tears fall. Not of sadness, of relief. They were safe. The routine changed. Jenna would wake up at 6, get the girls ready, have breakfast in the kitchen, and start her work. Martha still supervised her, but with less rigidity. Maybe because Jenna never gave her a reason to complain. The girls stayed in the laundry room during the morning. Jenna would lay blankets on the floor and leave some colorful rags for them to play with. It wasn't much, but they seemed happy. Elise liked to crawl. Claire preferred to sit, observing everything with those curious blue eyes. And the house, once as silent as a museum, began to change its sound. There were soft giggles coming from the laundry room, awkward little footsteps on the wooden floor, occasional cries when one of them fell or got hungry. Jenna tried to keep everything under control. She didn't want to be a bother. She didn't want to give Nolan a reason to regret his decision. But he never complained. In fact, he was almost never home during the day. He left early, came back late. When he was there, he stayed locked in his office. Until one afternoon, everything changed. It was Thursday. Jenna was cleaning the entrance hall when she heard the office door open. Nolan came out, adjusting his tie. He looked tired. He walked past Jenna without a word, just a nod. She went back to her work. But then she heard a small noise, a giggle, and quick little footsteps. She turned and saw Elise crawling down the hallway. The little girl had escaped from the laundry room. Jenna hadn't even noticed when, "Elise!" Jenna dropped her cloth and went after her. "Can I come here, sweetie?" But Elise found it amusing. She crawled faster, giggling as if it were a game. And then she saw Nolan. He was standing in the middle of the hallway, his back to her, looking at something on his phone. Elise crawled right up to him. She stopped at his feet. And then, with that innocent curiosity of a child, she grabbed the hem of his pants and tugged. Nolan looked down. Elise looked up. She smiled, that wide, few-toothed smile that lit up her whole face, and then she held up her little arms. Nolan stood frozen. Jenna came running, out of breath. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Ashford." "She escaped, I didn't see..." But Nolan wasn't listening. He was still looking at Elise. The little girl still had her arms stretched out, waiting. And then, slowly, he knelt down. He picked Elise up. The girl snuggled immediately against his chest, as if she knew she was safe. Jenna stood still, not knowing what to do. Nolan held Elise carefully, as if she were made of glass. His large hand supported the girl's small back. He looked at her face. Elise yawned, and then, without warning, She rested her little head on his shoulder and closed her eyes. Nolan remained motionless. Jenna saw his expression change. It was subtle, but it was there. Something in his eyes. Something that looked like pain or longing, or maybe both. He stood there in the middle of the hallway, holding Elise as she fell asleep. He didn't move. He didn't try to hand her back to Jenna. He just held her. The seconds passed. They turned into minutes. Jenna didn't dare say anything. She didn't dare move. There was something sacred about that moment. Something she had no right to interrupt. Finally, Nolan blinked. As if waking from a trance, he looked at Jenna. "She's asleep," he said in a low voice. "Yes, sir." He looked at Elise again. Her tiny hand was clutching his shirt. Her breathing was slow and steady. "She trusts easily," Nolan said. "That's how she is. Both of them are." Jenna took a step forward. "But I can take her, sir." But Nolan didn't hand her over right away. He stood for a few more seconds, just looking at the little girl's face. Then, carefully, he passed Elise to Jenna. The girl stirred a little, but didn't wake up. "I'm sorry for the trouble," Jenna said quietly. Nolan didn't answer. He just stood there watching. Then he turned and went back to his office. The door closed. Jenna stood there, holding Elise, trying to understand what had just happened. The next day, Jenna woke up early as usual. She got the girls ready, went down to the kitchen, and stopped. There was something on the laundry room floor, a toy. She approached it slowly. It was a teddy bear, small, soft, with a red ribbon around its neck. Simple, but new. Jenna looked around. No one. Martha hadn't arrived yet. Nolan had probably already left for work. She picked up the teddy bear and felt her chest tighten. Claire was crawling on the floor, exploring. When she saw the bear, her eyes lit up. She reached out her little hands, eager. Jenna handed her the toy. Claire grabbed it and laughed, that delightful baby laugh. Elise came over right after, curious. The two of them started to play, passing the bear back and forth. Jenna watched them, a lump in her throat. It was their first new toy, the first one that wasn't second-hand, donated or found somewhere. The first one someone had bought especially for them. Nolan came home late that afternoon. Jenna was finishing up the living room when she heard him come in. He put his briefcase in the hall, took off his jacket and started walking toward his office. But he stopped. The sound was coming from the laundry room, giggles, little noises. He turned his head slightly as if deciding something. Then he walked over there. Jenna was sitting on the floor with the girls. Elise and Claire were playing with the teddy bear, laughing every time it fell. Nolan stood in the doorway, just watching. Jenna sensed his presence and looked up. "Mr. Ashford." She started to get up, but he gestured with his hand. "Stay." She hesitated, but obeyed. Nolan walked into the laundry room. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and watched the girls. Claire noticed him. She smiled. She picked up the teddy bear and held it up proudly, as if showing it off. Nolan nodded. "It's nice." Claire laughed. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. Jenna looked at Nolan. He seemed different, more relaxed. The tension he always carried in his shoulders seemed to have lessened. "It's their first new toy," Jenna said softly. Nolan looked at her. Everything they had before was used, borrowed, or found. Jenna smiled, but there was sadness in it. "I was never able to buy them anything new." Nolan didn't say anything for a moment. Then he uncrossed his arms and put his hands in his pockets. "Every beginning needs something small." The sentence took Jenna by surprise, not because of what was said, but how it was said, gently, almost kindly. She nodded. "Thank you." He didn't reply, just stood there, watching the girls play. Elise crawled over to him again. This time she didn't hold up her arms. She just sat there, looking up at him, curious. Nolan knelt down. He got on her level. "Hi," he said. Elise clapped her hands. He almost smiled. Almost, but Jenna saw it, a slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. Too quick to be sure, but it was there. Claire came over too, dragging the teddy bear. The two of them sat there at his feet, looking as if he were the most interesting thing in the world. Nolan held out his hand. Claire grabbed one of his fingers. Elise grabbed another, and there they stayed. Jenna watched the scene in silence. There was something there, something she couldn't name, but she could feel it. Nolan wasn't just being polite. He wasn't just tolerating the girl's presence. He was present, truly present. In the days that followed, something shifted. Nolan started coming out of his office more often. He would walk through the house, pass by the laundry room. He always found an excuse to get water, to check on something, to talk to Martha. But Jenna knew he wanted to see the girls. One afternoon she was folding clothes when she saw him standing in the doorway again. This time he didn't just watch. He came in. He sat on the floor. Jenna blinked, surprised. Nolan Ashford, in his suit and tie, sitting on the laundry room floor. Elise crawled to him immediately. Claire followed. They weren't afraid of him. On the contrary, they seemed to enjoy his presence. Nolan picked up the teddy bear and held it in front of them. Claire giggled and tried to grab it. He let her. She pulled, he held on. A little game began. Jenna watched, unable to believe what she was seeing. Nolan wasn't smiling, but there was something in his eyes, something lighter, more alive. "They like you," Jenna said. Nolan looked at her. "Children are simple. They don't complicate things. That's true." He turned his attention back to the girls. Elise was trying to climb into his lap. He helped her up. Then he picked up Claire, too. The two of them sat there, in his lap, playing with the teddy bear. Nolan sat still. He didn't try to get rid of them. He didn't seem bothered. He just sat there. Jenna saw his hand move slowly, touch Elise's blonde hair, just a light touch, almost imperceptible, but it was there. "Thank you," Jenna said suddenly. Nolan frowned. "For what?" "For being kind to them. For—" She hesitated. "For giving us a place." He didn't answer right away. He kept looking at the girls. Then he said, quietly, "It's been a long time since this house has had any life in it." The sentence hung in the air. Jenna didn't ask what he meant. She didn't have to. She could see it in his expression, in the way he held the girls, in the way he looked at them, as if he were seeing something he had lost a long time ago. Nolan wasn't just offering them shelter. He was reconnecting with something, with someone, with a part of himself that had been buried. And Jenna realized, in that moment, that this was bigger than she had imagined. He didn't know it yet, but he was already involved. It was no longer just the boss offering help. It was a man rediscovering what it meant to feel. And the girls, with their simple innocence, were opening a door he had locked for years. Slowly, but it was opening. The house was quiet. Jenna had just put the girls to bed. Elise fell asleep quickly, as always. Claire took longer, needing to be held, to hear a soft song, to have her hair stroked. But now they were both asleep. Jenna left the room quietly, closing the door without a sound. She was tired, the kind of tired that came from the bones, not just the muscles. She went to the kitchen. She needed water. Maybe a minute of silence before going to sleep as well. She turned on only the light above the sink. The kitchen was dimly lit. She liked it that way, less harsh on the eyes. She filled a glass of water and sat at the table. She rested her head in her hands, took a deep breath. It had been a long day. The girls had been fussier than usual. Claire had cried all afternoon. Elise had fallen and bumped her knee. Small things, but they drained all her energy. Jenna closed her eyes. For a second, she allowed herself to just exist. Without thinking, without planning, just being, "Are you okay?" Jenna jumped in her chair, spilling almost the entire glass. Nolan was standing in the doorway. She hadn't heard him arrive. "Mr. Ashford," Jenna stood up quickly, wiping the spilled water with her hand. "Sorry, I didn't know you were—" "Sit." His voice wasn't harsh, just direct. Jenna hesitated, but obeyed. Nolan walked to the fridge, got a bottle of water, and filled a glass for himself. Then he pulled out a chair and sat across from her. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, but it was heavy. Jenna held her glass with both hands, without drinking. She looked at the water, at the table, at anywhere but him. "Are the girls asleep?" Nolan asked. "Yes, sir. Do they always sleep well?" "Claire sometimes wakes up in the middle of the night, but not for long." Nolan nodded. He took a sip of water. He stared at his own glass, as if lost in thought. Jenna didn't know why he was there. He never stayed up late. He always went up to his room right after dinner. But there he was, sitting in the kitchen at 10 o'clock at night. "How long has it been?" Nolan asked suddenly. Jenna looked up. "Sir, how long have you been alone?" The question caught Jenna off guard. She blinked, swallowed hard. The answer was on the tip of her tongue, but it hurt to say it out loud. "A year." Nolan said nothing. He just waited. And then, Jenna didn't know why, but the words started to flow, as if they had been trapped for too long and had finally found a way out. "My husband passed away a year ago. A car accident." She looked at her glass again. It was quick. They said he didn't suffer. Her voice was steady, but there was a pain there. Old, deep. The kind that never completely heals. The girls were 3 months old. He never got to see them grow up. Never got to hear their first laugh, to see their first teeth. Nolan didn't interrupt. He just listened. And there was something in the way he listened that made Jenna want to keep going. "I had no family. Neither did he. It was just the two of us." Jenna let out a short, humorless laugh. "So we always said it would be us against the world, that we didn't need anyone else, and then it was just me." She paused, took a deep breath. Her throat was tight, but she wasn't going to cry. Not now. The first few months were the worst. I couldn't think straight, couldn't sleep. The girls cried. I cried. We just existed. Day after day. No purpose, no plan. Just trying to survive. Nolan remained silent, but his expression had changed. He wasn't just listening out of politeness anymore. He was truly there. Present, attentive. "I had a little money saved up. I thought it would last a few months. But it didn't. The diapers, the formula, the rent, it all ran out too quickly." Jenna rubbed her face with her hands. "The car insurance didn't cover anything. His bills became my bills, debts I didn't even know existed." She paused, looked at her own hands. They were rough, calloused, the hands of someone who works non-stop. "I tried to ask for help. I went to churches, shelters, organizations. Some gave me food, used diapers, old clothes. Others closed the door in my face." Nolan frowned slightly. Jenna saw it. "I don't blame them," she continued. "Everyone has their own problems. No one wants another burden." "You're not a burden," Nolan said. His voice was low but firm. Jenna looked at him, surprised. To everyone I asked for help, They were wrong." The words hung in the air. Jenna didn't know what to say, because for so long she had believed she was a burden, that she and the girls were a problem no one wanted to solve. "Did you work the whole time?" Nolan asked. "Whenever I could. Hotels, cleaning, whatever came up." Jenna shrugged. "But with 2 babies, no one wants to hire you. No one wants the risk. No one wants the responsibility of an employee who might miss work because her child is sick. And you kept trying." "Because I had no choice." Her voice was firmer now, almost defiant. "I would look at them and know that if I gave up, we'd end up on the street or worse. I've heard stories. I've seen women lose their children because they couldn't take care of them." She gripped her glass tighter. "I'd rather die than let that happen." Nolan didn't look away. He studied her, as if he were seeing something he had never seen before, as if he were truly seeing her for the first time. "Do you have family anywhere?" he asked. Jenna shook her head. "My parents died when I was a teenager. An accident, too. Their car hit a truck head-on. I was in the back seat. I survived." She paused. "Sometimes I wonder why I survived. And they didn't. And after that, I was raised in foster care, bounced from family to family. Never stayed anywhere for long. Nobody really wanted me. Jenna gave a sad smile. I met my husband when I was 19. He worked at a restaurant where I washed dishes. He was the first person who made me feel like I had a place, like I mattered. Her voice cracked a little, and then he was gone, and I was alone again. The silence returned, but it was different now, denser, more intimate, as if an invisible barrier had fallen. Nolan placed his glass on the table slowly. Then he crossed his arms and leaned forward slightly. You're stronger than most people I know. Jenna blinked. She hadn't expected that. I'm not strong, sir. I just do what needs to be done. That is strength. His voice was firm, no room for argument. Most people would give up, throw in the towel, find an excuse. You didn't, even when everything was against you. Jenna felt her eyes sting. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold back the tears. But it was hard, because no one had ever said that to her. No one had ever acknowledged how difficult it was. I can't give up. They need me, and you need someone. The sentence took Jenna by surprise. She looked at him, confused. Nolan held her gaze. There was something there, something she couldn't quite decipher. Understanding, respect, maybe even admiration. You don't have to do everything alone, he said quietly. Not anymore. Jenna didn't know what to say. The words were stuck in her throat, because for so long she had done everything alone. There was no other option. There was no help. There was no support. But now there, sitting in that kitchen with him, she felt something different. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. Nolan stood up slowly. He took his glass to the sink, washed it in silence, then placed it in the dish rack. You need to rest, he said, without looking at her. Tomorrow is another day. Jenna nodded. She stood up too, her legs still trembling a little, not from exhaustion, from emotion. Mr. Ashford? He stopped and turned his head slightly. Thank you for listening. Nolan stood there for a second, then he nodded. Just that, a simple gesture, but it said so much. Good night, Jenna. It was the first time he had said her name. Not you, not the cleaner. Jenna. Good night, sir. He left the kitchen. His footsteps echoed down the hall until they disappeared up the stairs. Jenna stood there, motionless, processing everything that had just happened. Something had changed in that conversation. She was no longer just the desperate employee, no longer just the woman who had knocked on his door with 2 children in her arms. He saw her now, as a person, as a mother, as someone who had fought and survived the impossible. And for the first time in a long time, Jenna didn't feel judged. She felt understood. She turned off the light and went back to her room. She lay down beside the girls, listening to their soft breathing. That night, for the first time in a year, she slept soundly. No nightmares, no waking up every hour. Just peace. The thunder came without warning. A clap so loud it made the windows rattle. Jenna shot up in bed, her heart pounding. Another clap of thunder, then another. The rain started, not slowly. All at once, as if the sky had opened up, Jenna looked to her side. The girls were still asleep, but not for long. She got up slowly, trying not to make a sound. She went to the window. Outside, it was just darkness and water. The storm was fierce. The wind shook the trees in the garden. One more clap of thunder, and then the lights flickered. Once, twice, and went out. Darkness filled the room. Jenna stood still, waiting for the light to come back. It didn't. And then she heard it, crying. Claire woke up first, a low, frightened cry, then Elise, louder, more desperate. It's okay. It's okay. Jenna rushed to the bed. She fumbled in the dark until she found them both. Mommy's here. Everything's fine. But it wasn't. Another thunderclap exploded outside. Claire screamed. Elise started to sob, that choked, non-stop crying. Jenna picked them both up, tried to soothe them. She rocked them, sang softly, but they were too scared, and Jenna was too tired. It had been a long day. She had cleaned the entire house. The girls had slept poorly the night before. She hadn't had a proper rest in days, and now, there in the dark, with both of them crying uncontrollably, she felt her strength failing. "Please," she whispered, more to herself than to them. "Please, calm down." But they didn't calm down. Claire was crying so loudly her voice was already hoarse. Elise was trembling in her arms. Jenna sat on the bed, holding them both, trying not to break down too. Because if she broke down, there was no one to help. There never was. Another thunderclap. The girls screamed together. And then, at the door, a light. Jenna looked up. Nolan was standing there, holding a candle. The flickering light illuminated his face. He was wearing sweatpants and a plain t-shirt. Jenna had never seen him like this, always in a suit, always formal, but there he was, barefoot, with a candle in his hand. "I'm sorry," Jenna said, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean to wake you. I'll calm them down, I promise." "Are you alone?" Nolan asked. The question took Jenna by surprise. Yes, sir." He entered the room. The candlelight danced on the walls. He looked at the girls in her arms. Claire was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Elise's face was red, wet with tears. Nolan said nothing. He just approached. And then, slowly, he held out his arms. Jenna blinked. "Give her to me," Nolan said, gesturing toward Claire. "Sir, you don't have to give her to me." It wasn't an order. But it wasn't a request either. It was something in between. Jenna hesitated. Then, slowly, she passed Claire to him. The little girl cried louder at first, startled by the stranger, but Nolan held her firmly, not with fear, not with hesitation. He just held her. And then he started to rock her, slowly, from side to side. Claire sobbed, then sniffled. Her crying gradually subsided. Nolan sat next to Jenna on the bed. He said nothing, just kept rocking Claire. Jenna looked at him, still processing. Then she turned her attention back to Elise, who was still crying. "Shh, sweetie. It's okay. Mommy's here." She cradled Elise, sang softly, and stroked her blonde hair. And there they sat, the two of them side by side, by the light of a candle, cradling the girls. The storm continued outside. Thunder, heavy rain, wind beating against the windows. But inside the room, slowly, calm returned. Claire stopped crying. She rested her little head on Nolan's shoulder, took a deep breath. Her little eyes started to close. Elise took longer. But eventually, she calmed down too. She lay quietly in Jenna's lap, just sniffling now and then. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of the rain. Jenna looked at Nolan. He was looking at Claire. His expression was different, softer, as if something inside him had relaxed. "Thank you," Jenna said quietly. Nolan didn't answer right away. He just kept looking at Claire. Then he spoke, without taking his eyes off her. "You shouldn't have to do this alone. I'm used to it. You shouldn't be." Jenna didn't know what to say, because he was right. She shouldn't be used to it. She shouldn't have to handle everything on her own. But that's what she had until now. "Mr. Ashford, Nolan?" Jenna blinked. "To what? Call me Nolan." He finally looked at her. "No need for sir here, not now." Jenna nodded slowly. It felt strange, too intimate, but at the same time, "Right. Nolan," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. He nodded. Another clap of thunder echoed outside, but this time the girls didn't even stir. They were almost asleep. "They trust you," Jenna said. Nolan looked at Claire. Her little hand was clutching his t-shirt. Children are honest. They can feel when someone is truly present. "And are you?" He didn't answer right away. He thought for a moment, then said quietly, "Sometimes it's not what we say. It's that we stay." The words hung in the air. Jenna looked at him. Really looked, and she saw something she hadn't seen before. He was no longer just the cold, distant man, no longer just the boss. He was someone who understood, someone who knew what it meant to be present, not out of obligation, but by choice. "You stayed," Jenna said, her voice almost a whisper. Nolan looked at her. His eyes, in the candlelight, seemed lighter. "More surreal. I stayed." And there, in that dark room, by the light of a candle, as the storm raged outside, something changed between them. They were no longer boss and employee. They were no longer strangers. They were two people, sharing a moment, sharing a burden. And something was born there. Something Jenna couldn't name, but she could feel. Trust. Claire fell completely asleep. Her breathing became slow and steady. Elise too, both of them finally at peace. Nolan kept holding Claire. He didn't try to give her back to Jenna. He didn't try to get rid of her. He just stayed. Jenna felt her eyes sting, not from sadness, from relief, from something like gratitude. But deeper. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know. Then why?" Nolan was silent for a long moment. Then he said, so quietly Jenna almost didn't hear, "Because no one should be alone in a storm." The words hit Jenna like a physical blow. She looked at him. She saw the truth in his face. He wasn't just talking about her, he was talking about himself too. He understood. Because he was also alone. Always had been. "Thank you," Jenna said again. But this time the words carried more weight. Nolan nodded. Then, slowly, he stood up. He held Claire carefully and placed her on the bed next to Elise. The two slept, together, peacefully. He turned to Jenna. "You need to rest too." "I know." "Then rest. I'll stay for a bit, in case they wake up again." Jenna blinked. "You'll stay." "I will." She didn't argue, because, for the first time, she didn't have to. Nolan pulled up a chair and sat near the bed. He held the candle. The light illuminated his face. Jenna lay down beside the girls. She closed her eyes. And there, with him present, with the girls asleep, with the sound of the rain tapping against the window, she finally relaxed. She wasn't alone. And for the first time in a long time, that made all the difference. The storm continued. But inside, there was peace. And Nolan stayed. All night. Just as he had promised. The change started slowly. So slowly that Jenna almost didn't notice at first. Nolan always left early, 7 in the morning at the latest, and came back late. 8 wangs 9 at night, sometimes even later. The routine was predictable. He would leave when the house was still waking up and return when everything was already quiet. But the week after the storm, something changed. He came home at 6. Jenna was in the kitchen preparing the girls' dinner. Elise and Claire were playing on the floor with the colorful rags she had set out. When she heard the front door open, she glanced at the clock on the wall, 6:15, too early. She left the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, and saw Nolan in the hall, taking off his jacket. He hung it on the rack, loosened his tie, and looked at her. "Good evening," he said. "Good evening, Sir Nolan." Jenna was still getting used to calling him by his first name. It felt strange on her tongue, too intimate, but he had asked, "You're home early today?" "Finished up early." He didn't say anything else, just walked toward his office, as he always did. But he stopped halfway. He turned his head slightly, as if he were listening to something. The girls were laughing in the kitchen, that loud, delightful sound of children's laughter. Claire had knocked something over, and Elise found it the funniest thing in the world. Nolan hesitated. He stood there, in the middle of the hallway, just listening. Then he changed direction. He went to the kitchen. Jenna went back too, curious. When she entered, she saw Nolan standing in the doorway, just watching. Elise was trying to stack the colorful rags. Claire kept pulling them, knocking everything down. They both laughed every time the pile fell. "Are they okay?" Nolan asked. "Yes, just playing while I make their food." He nodded. He stood there for another moment, watching, hands in his pockets. His tie still a bit loose. He looked different like this, less formal, less distant. Then he went to his office, but the next day he came back at the same time, 6:15, and the day after that too, and the next. Jenna started to notice the pattern, started to expect it. 6 o'clock would arrive, and she'd hear the car pull in, 6:15, the door would open. Like clockwork. On Friday of that week, Jenna was sitting on the living room floor with the girls. She had finished her cleaning early. Martha had also left early. The house was quiet, and Jenna decided to spend some time with the girls before dinner. Claire was in her lap, playing with her mother's fingers. Elise was crawling on the rug, exploring every corner. The front door opened. 6:15, as always. Jenna heard his footsteps in the hall, the sound of his jacket being hung up, the keys being placed on the small table. She expected him to go straight to his office, as usual. But he didn't. Nolan appeared at the living room doorway. He stopped, looked at them. Jenna with Claire in her lap. Elise crawling. "Hi," Jenna said. "Hi." He loosened his tie, took off his watch and put it in his pocket. He ran a hand through his hair, as if he were tired. And then he did something Jenna didn't expect. He sat on the floor. Jenna blinked, surprised. Nolan, in his suit pants and dress shirt, sitting on the living room rug, his legs crossed. The sleeves of his shirt still buttoned at the cuffs. Elise noticed him immediately. She stopped what she was doing and crawled over to him. Curious, she grabbed his pant leg and pulled, trying to balance herself. Nolan looked at her. "Hi, Elise." The girl smiled, that few-toothed smile that lit up her whole face. Her blue eyes sparkled. Claire saw him too. She climbed out of Jenna's lap and crawled to him quickly. The two of them sat there at his feet, looking up as if he were the most interesting thing in the world. Nolan stood still for a second. Then he reached out and touched Claire's hair, lightly, almost hesitantly, as if he were still learning how to do it. "How was your day?" he asked, looking at Jenna. "Quiet." "They napped well after lunch, played a lot, and you?" Nolan shrugged. "Meetings, contracts, negotiations that go nowhere, the usual." He didn't sound excited. He sounded tired, the kind of tired that comes not from the body, but from the mind. Claire decided she wanted attention. She climbed into his lap without asking permission, just climbed up. She grabbed his shirt with her little hands and settled in. Elise saw her and wanted to as well. She tried to climb up but was smaller and couldn't make it. She got frustrated. She patted his leg, complaining. Nolan noticed. Without a word, he picked Elise up and placed her on his other knee. The two of them sat there, in his lap, Claire playing with the button on his shirt. Elise leaning against his chest, observing everything around her, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Jenna watched the scene in silence. There was something different about him, something lighter. The tension he always carried in his shoulders, that constant rigidity seemed to have eased. He was relaxed. "Do you want to have dinner with us?" Jenna asked, without much thought. Nolan looked at her. "What? Dinner? I was going to make something simple. Rice, chicken, vegetables, nothing fancy, but..." She shrugged. "If you'd like." He didn't answer right away. He looked at the girls. Claire had stopped playing with the button and was now just resting her little head on his shoulder. Elise was yawning. Then he nodded. "I'd like that." From that day on, everything truly changed. Nolan started coming home and, instead of going straight to his office, he would go to wherever the girls were. Sometimes it was the living room, sometimes the laundry room, sometimes their bedroom if Jenna was changing diapers or putting them to sleep. He would sit on the floor, play, talk, watch. And Jenna realized he didn't do it like someone who was helping. It wasn't an obligation. It wasn't pity. It wasn't charity. He did it like someone who was part of it. One day, Nolan brought home a box. Jenna was in the kitchen when he arrived. She heard the door but didn't go to see. She was busy chopping vegetables for dinner. But then she heard his voice. "Jenna?" She wiped her hands on a cloth and went to the living room. Nolan was on the floor with the girls, and there was a large box next to him. He opened it and started taking out building blocks. Colorful, big, perfect for small hands. Claire clapped her hands, excited. Elise tried to grab a block, but it was still inside the box. Nolan took a red block and gave it to her, then a blue one for Claire, then a yellow one. A green one. The two were fascinated. They held the blocks, looked at the colors, tried to bite them. Jenna sat on the sofa, watching. Nolan started stacking the blocks, slowly. One on top of the other. Claire watched, focused. When he placed the fourth block, she reached out her hand and knocked everything over. The blocks scattered across the floor. Nolan looked at her. "Seriously?" Claire laughed. That lovely, loud laugh. He started again. He stacked 5 blocks this time. Claire waited. Then she knocked them over again, laughing even louder. Nolan shook his head, but there was a smile there, a small one, but it was there. And then something happened. He laughed too. It wasn't much, just a low chuckle. But it was real. Jenna felt her chest tighten, because it was the first time she had ever seen him truly laugh. The days turned into weeks, and Nolan kept coming home early. He kept sitting on the floor with the girls. He kept staying for dinner. Jenna started cooking for 3, not just for her and the girls, for him too. She made simple dishes, but with care, and he always ate everything, always said thank you, and he always stayed, even after dinner, even after the girls were asleep. He stayed. He would sit on the sofa with Jenna. They would talk about the day, about the girls, about nothing and everything at the same time, and Jenna started to realize that she looked forward to those moments. 6:15. The door opening. His footsteps. His presence. She started to wait for him. One night, after dinner, Jenna was washing the dishes. Nolan had taken the girls into the living room. She could hear their laughter from where she stood, loud, happy. When she finished, she dried her hands and went over. The scene she found made her stop at the door. Nolan was lying on the rug, on his back. Elise was sitting on his stomach, laughing. Claire was next to him, trying to climb on too. He was holding them both with his hands, playing airplane. He would lift Elise into the air. She would laugh. Then Claire, she would squeal with joy. Jenna stood there, just watching. There was something so normal about it, so simple. A man playing with 2 children on the living room floor, but for Nolan, this wasn't simple. This was everything. She could see it in his eyes, in the way he looked at the girls, in the way he smiled now, more easily, more genuinely. "They'll need to sleep soon," Jenna said softly. Nolan looked at her. The girls were still laughing on top of him. "Just a little longer." She smiled. "All right." She sat on the sofa. She watched, absorbing the moment. After a while, the girls started to get tired. Elise yawned. Claire rubbed her eyes with her little hands. "Bedtime," Jenna said. She picked them both up, one in each arm, and took them to their room. She changed their diapers, put on their soft pajamas, gave them their bottles. She sang softly until they fell asleep. First Claire, then Elise. When she returned to the living room, she expected Nolan to have gone to his office or his own room, but he was still there, sitting on the sofa now, staring into space, his hands resting on his knees. "Are they asleep?" he asked. "Yes." Jenna sat next to him, not too close, but close enough to feel his warmth. They were silent for a moment, a comfortable silence, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Then Nolan spoke. "I notice when it's getting close to 6. Jenna looked at him. "What?" "At work, during meetings, when I'm looking at contracts, I look at the clock all the time, counting the minutes." He paused, waiting for 6 o'clock to arrive. Jenna said nothing. She just listened. Before, I used to stay late because I had no reason to come back. The house was empty, silent. It didn't matter if I got home at 8 or 10. He looked at her. "But now?" He didn't finish the sentence. "Now?" Jenna asked softly. Nolan looked at his own hands, then at her again. "Before, I came back to an empty house. Now, I come home." The words hung in the air. Heavy. True. Jenna felt something tighten in her chest. It wasn't pity. It wasn't compassion. It was understanding. Recognition. "You were lonely," she said. It wasn't a question. Nolan nodded. I always have been. But you don't have to be anymore. He looked at her. Really looked. And there was something in his eyes. Something vulnerable. Something he rarely let show. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. I don't know how to be present. How to be a part of something. I've always been alone. I've always kept my distance. You're already doing it. How? Jenna smiled, a soft smile. You sit on the floor, you play with blocks, you let the girls climb on you, you stay for dinner. You come home early, you laugh when they laugh. She paused. You don't realize it, but the girls already wait for you. Claire looks at the door every time she hears a noise around 6. Elise smiles when she sees you. They know you're a part of this. Nolan was silent, processing, absorbing. And you? He asked suddenly. Jenna blinked. Me? Do you know it too? She hadn't expected the question. She wasn't prepared, because the answer was yes. She knew. She felt it. She waited for him too, but saying it out loud felt too big, too important. I know, she said finally, quietly, but firmly. Nolan nodded. He didn't say anything else, but she saw it in his eyes. He understood. And something shifted between them in that moment, something subtle, but real. The following week, Nolan came home with another gift. This time, it wasn't a toy. It was a high chair, 2 of them actually, for the girls to eat at the table. Jenna stood in the kitchen doorway, watching him assemble them. He had taken off his jacket, rolled up his shirt sleeves. He was on the floor with a screwdriver, tightening screws. You didn't have to, she said. I know. He tightened the last screw on the first chair. He tested it to see if it was sturdy. But they're growing up. They need to sit at the table, eat with us. Jenna didn't argue, because he was right, and because there was something beautiful in it, in the care, in the attention to detail. That night, Claire sat in the high chair for the first time. She banged on the tray with her little hands, excited. Elise wanted to as well. She fussed until Jenna put her in the other one. The 3 of them had dinner together, at the table, side by side. Claire threw food on the floor. Elise knocked over her cup of water, and Nolan laughed. A real loud laugh. Jenna looked at him, at the girls, at the scene, and she realized this was exactly what they had become, a family. Another day, Nolan came home to find Jenna in the living room, exhausted. The girls had been difficult all day. Claire hadn't stopped crying. Elise had fallen and hit her head. Jenna was at her breaking point. Nolan noticed immediately. He didn't ask what had happened. He just picked up both girls and said, "Go rest, I'll take care of them." Jenna hesitated. "Are you sure?" "I am." She went to her room. She lay down. And for the first time in a long time, she took a real nap. Without worrying, without being on high alert. When she woke up an hour later, the house was silent. She went to the living room. Nolan was sitting on the floor, leaning against the sofa. Elise was in his lap, asleep. Her little head was resting on his chest. Claire was lying on the rug beside him, also sleeping. He was just holding Elise. In silence, with that gentle expression he only had when he was with them, Jenna sat down on the floor next to him. "Thank you," she whispered. He looked at her. "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do." "Why?" "Because you don't have to do any of this. You have no obligation, but you do it anyway." Nolan was silent. He looked at the sleeping Elise. He stroked her hair gently. "Today, at work, I didn't think about reports or contracts. I didn't think about numbers or negotiations." He paused. "I only thought about getting here." Jenna felt her eyes sting. "Maybe that's it, having a place where you feel you belong." Nolan looked at her, then at Elise, then at Claire sleeping on the floor. "Maybe," he said, but Jenna knew. It wasn't maybe. It was, he had found it. A place, a home, a family. And for the first time in his life, he was no longer alone. None of them were. The evening came gently. The sun slowly set on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Jenna was in the garden with the girls. She had finished her work early and decided to enjoy the nice weather. Elise was crawling through the grass. Claire was sitting, plucking little leaves and observing them with fascination. Jenna sat on the wooden bench under the tree. She took a deep breath. The air was fresh. The garden smelled of flowers and damp earth from the morning's watering. It was one of the few peaceful moments she had. The back door opened. Nolan came out. He had taken off his jacket and tie. He was just wearing his white shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked tired, but not the kind of tired that came from work. It was something else. He saw Jenna on the bench and walked over to her. "May I sit?" "Of course." He sat next to her, not too close, but close enough that their shoulders almost touched. They were silent for a moment, just watching the girls. Elise had found a small yellow flower and was trying to pick it. Claire was clapping her hands every time she managed to grab a leaf. "Tough day?" Jenna asked. Nolan shrugged. "No more than usual." But there was something in his voice, something heavy. Jenna looked at him. She studied his face, the tense jaw. His eyes fixed on the girls, but distant, as if he were thinking about something else. "Are you all right?" He didn't answer right away. He just kept staring straight ahead. Then he spoke, his voice low. "I never had this." Jenna frowned. "What?" Nolan made a vague gesture with his hand. "This. Sitting in the garden, watching children play. Having someone ask if I'm all right." He paused. "I never had any of this." Jenna remained silent, waiting, sensing that he needed to talk, that there was something he had kept bottled up for too long. Nolan took a deep breath. "I lost my parents when I was 18. The words came out dry, devoid of emotion, as if he had told that story so many times it had lost its weight. But Jenna knew, she knew that wasn't true. The weight was still there, just buried. "Both of them?" she asked softly. "Both." "A plane crash. They were coming back from a business trip." He looked at his own hands. "I was in college, a freshman. I had just moved out. Thought I was starting my life." He paused. "And then I got the call." Jenna felt her chest tighten. She knew that pain, knew what it was like to get that call, the news that changes everything. They had a company, a big, complex one, and suddenly, it was mine. Nolan rubbed his face with his hands. "I was 18. I knew nothing. I wasn't ready, but you took over. I had no choice. There were employees depending on that company, entire families. If I let it all fall apart, they would lose everything." He looked at her. "So I dropped out of college. I learned everything I could. I worked 20 hours a day. I did what needed to be done." Jenna could see the pain in his eyes, the pain of a stolen youth, of responsibilities that should never have been his. "And you succeeded." "I did. The company grew. It thrived. I did everything right, on paper, at least." He let out a bitter laugh. "But I lost everything that mattered in the process." "What do you mean?" Nolan was silent for a long moment. He watched Elise trying to stand up. She fell. She tried again. He almost smiled. "Work became my armor, my excuse not to feel anything. If I was busy, I didn't have to think. I didn't have to remember I was alone." He crossed his arms. "I built an entire life around it. Work, meetings, contracts, numbers. It was all I had. And it was your prison, too." Nolan looked at her, surprised, as if she had read his mind. "It was... I didn't realize it, but it was. I'd come home and there was nothing. No one. Just silence. Just emptiness." He paused. "I thought that's how it had to be, that I didn't deserve more than that." "Why?" "Because I never allowed myself to feel, never allowed myself to want more." He looked at the girls again. "I thought feeling was a weakness, that needing someone was dangerous." Jenna understood. She understood more than he could imagine. "And now..." Nolan fell silent. Claire had crawled closer to them. She held onto his pant leg, looked up and smiled. He touched her hair gently, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "Now I see the world differently. His voice was low, almost a whisper. How so? He looked at Jenna, really looked, and there was something in his eyes she had never seen before, something vulnerable, something true. With you all, I see colors I'd never seen. I hear laughter I never thought existed. I feel things I've spent my whole life avoiding. He paused. Sounds for the first time. I want to stay. I want to be present, not as a boss, not as someone who's helping. He swallowed hard, as someone who needs you. The words hung in the air, heavy, honest, raw. Jenna felt her eyes sting, because she understood. She felt the same way. She reached out and took his hand, their fingers intertwined. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a promise of anything. It was just connection, truth, recognition. You're not alone anymore, she said quietly. Nolan squeezed her hand. Neither are you. They stayed like that, sitting on the bench, holding hands, watching the girls play as the sun finished setting. There were no promises, no grand declarations, just truth. And sometimes that was all they needed. The days that followed were different, as if that conversation in the garden had opened something, a door that was once locked. Nolan didn't just come home early, he participated. One night, Jenna was putting the girls to bed when he appeared at the bedroom door. Need help? Jenna looked at him, surprised. You want to help? I do. He came in, sat on the bed next to her. He took Claire in his lap while Jenna held Elise. Do you know how to read stories? Jenna asked. No, but I can try. She picked up a picture book. Simple, colorful. She handed it to him. Nolan opened the book. He looked at the pages, then at Claire, and he began to read. His voice was low, soft, different from how it was during the day. There was no rigidity, no distance, just a man reading to a child. Claire looked at the book, fascinated. She pointed at the pictures. Nolan explained. That's a dog. That's a cat. Elise watched too from Jenna's lap, her little eyes heavy. When Nolan finished the book, both girls were almost asleep. He carefully placed Claire in her bed. Jenna did the same with Elise. They stood there for a moment, just watching the girls sleep. Their soft breathing, their peaceful little faces. Thank you, Jenna whispered. For what? For being here, for being a part of this. Nolan looked at her. I should be thanking you. Another night, Jenna was at the kitchen table. She had a notebook open in front of her, a pen in her hand. Nolan came in to get some water and stopped. What are you doing? Jenna looked up. She seemed almost embarrassed. Studying. Studying what? I was thinking about going back to school, taking an online course. Something simple. Business administration, maybe. She shrugged. I dropped out of high school. Never had the chance to continue. Nolan pulled up a chair and sat down. You want to go back to school? Yes, I've always wanted to, but I never had the time, or the money, or the courage. She looked at her notebook. But now I thought maybe it was possible. It is possible. Jenna looked at him. You think so? I know so. And if you need help, I can help. With the costs, with the girls while you study, with whatever you need. Jenna felt her throat tighten. Why? Why do you do this? Nolan looked at her, straight in the eyes. Because you deserve it. Because you're more than a cleaner, you're smart, strong, capable. He paused. And because I want you to have the chances I had. Jenna didn't know what to say. The words were stuck in her throat, so she just nodded. Thank you. You don't have to thank me. But she did, because no one had ever believed in her like this. No one had ever seen her potential, until now. Mealtimes changed too. Before, Jenna ate alone with the girls. Quickly. Functionally, just to get fed. But now the three of them had dinner together. Every night, Nolan would help set the table, serve the girls, talk to Jenna about her day. And there was something special about it, something that went beyond the food. There was care, attention, presence. One night, Jenna made a stew, simple but delicious. Nolan had 2 helpings. "This is incredible," he said. Jenna smiled. "It's just stew." "No, it's more than that." He looked at her. "It tastes like home." The word hung between them. Home. Not just a building, not just a place to sleep, but something more. Something you build with people, with moments, with care. Another night, after dinner, they were in the living room. The girls were already asleep. Jenna was on the sofa, reading a book for her course. Nolan was next to her, working on his laptop. But after a while, he closed the computer. He just sat there, staring into space. "Are you okay?" Jenna asked. He looked at her, then around the living room, at the house. This is what I never knew I wanted." Jenna closed her book. "What do you mean?" This life, this routine, family dinners, reading stories to the girls, sitting on the sofa at the end of the day with someone beside me." He paused. "I've spent my whole life building a company, accumulating money, success, but I never had this. And now you do. Now I do." He looked at her. "And I don't want to lose it." Jenna's heart raced. There was no promise in his words, no declaration, but there was truth, and truth was more important. "You won't lose it," she said quietly. "How do you know?" "Because I don't want to lose it either. None of us do." Nolan nodded. He didn't say anything else. He just reached out his hand. Jenna took it. And there they stayed, on the sofa, holding hands, in silence. They didn't need words. They didn't need promises, because they already had something more valuable. They had each other. And for the first time in both their lives, that was enough. The house was now alive, not just with the sound of the girls, but with presence, with connection, with real life. Nolan read books every night. He made funny voices. The girls would laugh. So would Jenna. Jenna studied at night, and Nolan would stay with her. Sometimes he helped. Sometimes he just sat there, present. The meals tasted of care, of attention, of family. And they, the 3 adults and 2 children, had become something none of them had expected. A family. Not by blood. Not by paper, but by choice. And that, in the end, was what mattered most. It was Saturday morning. The sun streamed through the living room windows, illuminating everything with that soft, late spring light. Jenna was sitting on the rug with the girls. Nolan had come down a little while ago, still in sweatpants and a t-shirt, messy hair, bare feet, no rush. Nowhere to go. It was one of the rare days he didn't work. He sat on the floor next to Jenna. Claire immediately crawled over to him, smiling, that smile that showed her 4 front teeth. Nolan picked her up. "Good morning to you too," he said. Elise was busy trying to stack blocks. The concentration on her little face was almost comical. Her tongue sticking out, her blue eyes fixed on the colorful blocks. Every time she managed to place one on top of another, she would clap for herself, proud. "She's determined today," Jenna commented, "just like her mother." Jenna looked at him. Nolan didn't take his eyes off Elise, but there was a half smile on his face, the kind of smile she had learned to recognize. The one that meant he was happy. She felt something warm in her chest, that kind of quiet happiness that comes from simple moments, from moments that cost nothing but are worth everything. Claire started playing with Nolan's hair. She tugged gently. He pretended it hurt, making an exaggerated face. "Ouch. You're strong, aren't you?" Claire laughed. That loud, delightful laugh that filled the whole house, that made any bad day seem better. Elise looked at them. She dropped the blocks immediately. She crawled over to Nolan too, not wanting to be left out of the fun, not wanting to miss anything. He scooped her up with his other arm. Now he had both of them in his lap, Claire on the left, Elise on the right. Each one settled on a knee. "You two are heavy, you know. You're growing up way too fast." The girls didn't care. They just snuggled in closer. Elise rested her little head on his shoulder. Claire played with the drawstring of his t-shirt, fascinated by the texture. Jenna watched the scene. There was something so natural about it, so right. As if it had always been this way, as if they had always been a family. Nolan started to rock them gently, side to side. The girls seemed to like it. Elise closed her eyes for a moment, relaxing completely. "Tired?" he asked softly. Elise didn't answer with words. She just lay quietly, but then slowly she wrapped her little arms around his neck, squeezing, as if giving him a hug, and then she spoke. "Duh." The voice was quiet, almost inaudible, but it was there. Nolan froze. Jenna held her breath. The entire world seemed to stop for a second. "Da," Elise repeated, clearer this time, more confident. Nolan didn't move, didn't blink, just stood still, as if any movement would shatter the moment. As if it would make the word disappear. Jenna felt her eyes sting. She brought a hand to her mouth, trying to hold back the emotion rising in her throat. Did she just... Nolan's voice failed him. It came out weak, trembling. "She did," Jenna confirmed, her voice choked with emotion. "She called for you." Nolan looked at Elise. The little girl had opened her eyes and was watching him, those clear blue eyes innocent, full of absolute trust, full of love. "Da," she said again, this time as a statement, as if she knew exactly what she was saying, as if that word was his, only his. And then something happened. Nolan's eyes welled up with tears. Jenna had never seen him like this. Never seen him so vulnerable, so completely human. He hugged Elise to his chest, gently, as if she were the most precious thing in the world, as if she were made of glass and might break. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. He cleared his throat, blinked fast, tried again. "I never thought I'd hear that." Jenna moved closer. She touched his arm. Felt the tension there, felt the emotion. "She knows," Jenna said softly. "She knows who's here for her, who takes care of her, who plays with her every day, who loves her." Nolan closed his eyes. A single tear rolled down his face. Just one, but it was enough. It was everything. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "You do. More than anyone." Jenna squeezed his arm. "You are here every day, in every moment. You are her father, Nolan, maybe not by blood, but you are." He opened his eyes. He looked at Jenna, and in that gaze was so much gratitude, so much relief, so much pure happiness. "Thank you," he said. Just that. But the word carried the weight of everything he was feeling. Claire, sensing that something important was happening, wanted attention too. She held Nolan's face with her small hands and turned it toward her. "Da," she tried to imitate her sister. The pronunciation wasn't perfect, but it was there. Nolan let out a laugh, a wet, emotional laugh, full of joy. "You two are going to be the end of me." But he was smiling. That genuine smile, the one that lit up his whole face, the one that reached his eyes. And Jenna realized that this was a moment they would never forget, a moment that would forever define who they were. A week later, something else happened. Jenna was in the kitchen, preparing lunch. The girls were in the living room with Nolan. He had the day off again and decided to spend every minute with them. Jenna could hear the laughter coming from the other room, the sound of Nolan making funny voices. The girls loved it when he did that. They would squeal with joy every time. She smiled, stirring the pot on the stove. That sound had become the soundtrack of the house. Laughter, life, joy. And then she heard it. "Jenna, Jenna, come here, quick!" Nolan's voice was different, excited, urgent, full of enthusiasm. Jenna dropped the spoon and ran to the living room, her heart pounding. When she entered, she saw Nolan kneeling on the floor. Claire was standing in front of him, holding his hands, wobbly, unsteady, her little legs trembling with the effort. "Look," Nolan said, his eyes shining. "Look what she's doing." Jenna stood in the doorway, barely able to breathe. Nolan let go of Claire's hands slowly, very slowly. The little girl stood on her own. For 1 second, 2, 3, her legs wobbled, her little arms stretched out to the sides, trying to balance. And then she took a step, wobbly, unsteady, but a step. Then another. "Come on, Claire, come to Mommy," Jenna said, quickly kneeling and holding out her arms. You can do it, sweetie. Come on. Claire looked at her, smiled, that smile that showed her few little teeth, and she took another step, then another, then one more, 5 steps in total. And then she fell into Jenna's arms. You did it. You walked. Jenna covered her with kisses, on her face, her hair, her cheeks. My sweet girl, you walked all by yourself. Claire giggled, not quite understanding all the emotion, but happy nonetheless. Happy because Mommy was happy. Nolan had a hand on his chest, smiling as if he'd just won the lottery, as if this were the best day of his life. She walked. She really walked. I saw. Jenna was laughing and crying at the same time. Tears streamed down her face, but they were tears of pure joy. And then Elise, not wanting to be left behind, pulled herself up using the sofa. She stood, looked at Nolan, that determined gaze. Da! Nolan turned to her, still on his knees. You want to try too? Elise let go of the sofa. Jenna held her breath again. The little girl stood still for a second, wobbling. Then she took a step, slowly, unsteadily, but a step. Then another, straight into Nolan's arms. He picked her up, lifting her into the air. You too. Both of you on the same day. Elise laughed, that loud laugh that echoed through the house, a laugh of victory, of accomplishment. Jenna stood up, still holding Claire. She walked over to Nolan. The 4 of them stood there, in the middle of the living room, hugging, laughing, crying, celebrating together. It was one of those moments that are etched in your memory forever, that become precious memories, that define what truly matters. They're growing up so fast, Jenna said, her voice choked with emotion. They are. Nolan touched Elise's hair, then Claire's, with that gentleness he had learned. And I don't want to miss a single moment. You won't. You're here. He looked at her, really looked. I am. And I'm going to keep being here. It wasn't an empty promise. It was the truth. It was a commitment. And Jenna knew it. The next morning, everything was peaceful. It was Sunday. The sun gently streamed through the kitchen window. Jenna was making breakfast. Simple pancakes, chopped fruit, fresh coffee. The smell filled the house. Nolan came down with the girls, one in each arm, both still in their pajamas, their blonde hair messy from sleep. Claire was rubbing her little eyes. Elise was yawning. Good morning, he said. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Better than I have in years. He smiled. I wake up and know I have a reason to get up. He placed the girls in their high chairs. They immediately started banging on the trays with their little hands, excited to eat. Jenna served the pancakes. She cut them into small pieces for the girls, put fruit on the side, strawberries, bananas. Nolan poured coffee for them both. He sat at the table. He took his cup and drank slowly, savoring it, and there they were, the 4 of them, eating together. As they did every morning now, Claire ate with her hands. She mashed the fruit, threw half of it on the floor. Elise tried to use her spoon, concentrating. Half of it landed in her lap, but she kept trying. Jenna and Nolan talked about simple things, about the day, about what to do over the weekend, about a park he had seen that he thought the girls would like, and there was something so complete about it, so right, so perfect in its imperfection. After breakfast, while Nolan was wiping the girls' faces with a damp cloth, Jenna stared out the window, thinking about everything, about how life had changed. What are you thinking about? Nolan asked, noticing her silence. Jenna turned to him, she smiled, that soft smile that carried so many feelings. I was thinking that this all started with me knocking on your door. Nolan stopped what he was doing. He put the cloth aside. He looked at her. It's true. I was desperate, hopeless, broke. Out of options. She let out a soft laugh, shaking her head, thinking no one would give me a chance, that I would end up on the street with 2 babies. And then you knocked. And then I knocked. She looked at him. And you opened the door. Nolan approached slowly. He stood beside her, close, but respecting her space. And I, who had always lived locked away, decided to open it. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Jenna looked at him, really looked, and she saw everything he was, everything he had become. No longer the cold, distant man she had met, no longer the unreachable boss, but someone real, someone present, someone who loved with everything he had. "The best decision you ever made?" she asked teasingly, but wanting to hear the answer, Nolan didn't hesitate. Not for a second. "The very best." He looked at the girls. Claire was trying to climb down from her high chair on her own. Elise was clapping her hands, humming something incomprehensible. Happy, safe, loved. "They changed everything," Nolan said, his voice low but firm. "You all changed everything. You changed everything for us too." He looked at her. There was something in his eyes, something deep, something that went beyond words. "I don't know what my life was like before you. I can't even remember what it was like to wake up in that empty house. What it was like to come back and have no one." He paused. "And I don't want to remember." Jenna felt her eyes sting. Again. But it was happiness, pure and simple. The kind that hurts because it's so intense. "Then don't remember. Just live this. Live every day." "That's what I plan to do." He reached out his hand. Jenna took it. Their fingers intertwined. Familiar. Comfortable. Right. And there they stayed, holding hands, watching the girls, watching the life they had built together, brick by brick, moment by moment. The girls continued to play. Claire managed to get down from her chair and crawled to the rug. Elise followed right after. Nolan squeezed Jenna's hand lightly. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For knocking on my door, for not giving up, for letting me be a part of this." He looked at her. "For teaching me what really matters." Jenna smiled. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. "Thank you for opening it." And there, in that kitchen lit by the morning sun with two little girls playing and laughing, they understood. This was what they had built. Not just a house, but a home. Not just a routine, but a life. Not just a convenience, but a family, real, true, forever. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been planned. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And it was real. And it was all they ever needed. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.